everybody, Laura Eisenhower here. I am so excited to present a very courageous woman. And before I do that, though, I just want to share a little bit about some of the material that we'll be covering. It's really important for me to send some love to everybody that's been impacted by this story breaking out, the victims, anyone who's put their trust and faith in this person, and just anyone struggling with the content, with all the different news stories and, you know, just what to make of it all. So, and I also want to say, in my viewpoint, whoever did go to see John of God, what is happening to him, I feel, doesn't take away your experience, and just really honor, you know, just your own, you know, direct connect, and nothing can take that away. So in my mind, you also experience your own higher power, and this doesn't need to injure your time there. I hope it doesn't. This is a man who is working with many entities, so it wasn't really him that you were experiencing. So this interview is really about looking at the man and some of the choices that he made. And if there's criminal activity going on, this is really so we can understand more, so that we can find the truth. And that is the most important thing. So I'm so happy that you're here with me, Amy. It meant so much, the synchronicity of you answering the phone. I was just so surprised. I was determined to find you after I saw your video. And so let me introduce Amy. And Amy Biank, the intuitive angel, is dedicated to helping people transcend fear and live lives filled with joy. Amy believes everyone has the power to connect to their intuition. You can experience this incredible alignment through energy readings, connecting with the spirits of loved ones, or by participating in classes focused on developing your psychic skills. Mediumship, meditation, intuitive training, sacred journeying, shamanism, personal coaching, and so much more. You can call or text her at 630-554-5040. And Amy, yeah, I'm just, like I said, you're incredibly courageous, and this is just such a big deal because it connects to so many things. And of course, I have a lot of questions for you. So I want to just start at the beginning. Okay. In regards to how you ended up at that location in Brazil, and maybe a little bit about yourself and just kind of what you were going into the experience for, and, you know, just a little bit about all that.
Okay. I was a tour guide, and not a tour guide, a Casa tour guide, but a tour guide that traveled the world and found interesting places, and then people would join me so they could have experiences. Okay. So some of the people at the Casa were tour guides for the Casa. So there's a big difference. So I liked to go. I met someone who said they were going to go see their healer, and their healer was John of God in Brazil. And I said, like most adventurers, I'm in. Let's go. I did some research, and Shirley MacLaine had been there. And I thought, it's okay. It's in the mountains of Brazil, in this little remote town. It'll be an interesting experience to see. Since I traveled a lot all over the world, when I went, I was expecting, well, I was expecting joy. It was very innocent at that time when I went. People, the Brazilians far outnumbered the foreigners when I first went there, and they received medicine, the Passiflora. They would sit and meditate. It was lovely, like a yoga retreat. Okay, it was very nice, and he. I will say some of the things, like I never would have allowed myself to have a visible surgery, because I personally felt that visible surgeries were barbaric. But then as a tour guide, you don't ever judge a culture. You do yourself wrong to judge. So I was just observant. You know, it wasn't my thing to have a forceps stuffed up my nose, but who can say? I actually, at the time, my background is more in spiritism, so it wasn't that hard for me to believe that entities or angels were working with him. It fit in with my cosmology. Okay, so I thought, well, fine. You know, these doctors come. That's very interesting, isn't that? Wouldn't that be lovely if my local Reiki healer could channel some amazing healer besides just doing the Reiki? I was naive and credulous and joyful to be there. And I think so many people had that same experience. They went and they felt good. And I brought my first group after the first time I went to explore it. Then I brought my first group just like maybe a month later. I have to say that I didn't bring sick people, because my personal feeling is that travel is contrary to healing, that it puts too much of a strain on people. But I brought a lot of people who were going to check things out. And then everybody needs, their knee worked on, or their heart, my broken heart, that kind of thing. But I never did take the really sick ones. It wasn't the kind of people that I attracted. So I was there from 2002 to 2008, and I went over 40 times during that time, bringing people. I probably brought the largest group ever. It was 120 people at one time, just to see. And still until that time, which was 2008, there was no celebrities had come. Nobody was, Oprah wasn't there. John Kionis wasn't there. But what was happening is he was attracting kind of a cadre of powerful women and men who were wanting to promote him. So that's when the idea that the tour guides were making money started happening, because the more they promoted him, the more famous he got, the more groups they could bring. So you'll hear that rumor that that's what it was about. Although I have to say personally, I thought many of the tour guides were very integrous. But then the people who were, anytime in the U.S., when there's a chance to make money, it becomes capitalism, right? So I think in the early days, Joao was certainly, his goal, I believe, was to be an important businessman. I don't think we here want to be spiritual. We here want to be healers. I don't think Joao ever wanted that. I think he wanted to be an important businessman. He had a cattle ranch. He had other things. And the healing part was just something he did because, for whatever reason, I'm not sure. And I liked sitting and, the Canterbury Tales, when you go and you meet all kinds of different people and you sit in a cafe and you share experiences. Do you know how healing that is? Mm-hmm. We don't travel enough here in the United States. You need to go and share stories and have wonderful times. Now, that said, different cultures are different. So sometimes there was an adjustment between people who expected certain services and didn't get them, or had high expectations. And that's kind of what a tour guide does. They manage expectations. They make sure everybody's safe, and they manage expectations. But then around 2006, 2007, as I came, I began seeing, hearing rumors that certain, you would ask, like, oh, where is that lady from France? Because she had a house there. Suddenly the person would be gone. And I would say, where is this person? What's happening?
Because everything's normally out in the open, right?
What?
Everything's normally out in the open, right? So
yeah. And I would hear, because I was only there for maybe either 2 weeks or 10 days. And then later I only went for a week, because I took people to other places in Brazil, not just the Casa. So, but I was friends with a lot of people, and they said, she got upset. She felt that Joao had molested her, acted inappropriately. And I have to say, it did not set off alarm bells as much as it should have. I wish it had, because in the spiritual world, many of the gurus have spiritual wives.
Right.
It's the way it works. And so I wasn't one of them, and I didn't allow my people to be hurt or get involved with that. Wasn't allowed. So if somebody else did it, who am I? And then in Brazil, they have this saying, whatever happens behind closed doors is nobody's business. And at that time, Joao was still single. Okay. I have to say the workers were hoping he would find a wife because and he's been married 8 or 9 times. So he was between wives. But then when I brought the large group, okay, he has an office right off where the healing room is. And there's a bench. And oftentimes when you exit the healing room, you'd see these people waiting on the bench. I was not there to ask questions about what he was doing. I was just there participating. But I saw one of my people sitting on the bench because he asked to see her privately. And she was really excited to be seen privately. I mean, it would be like having an audience with the Pope or something. You know?
Yeah, going backstage and
yeah, you think you're like really cool, right? So I sat there with her, and then they waved us to the door. Our stories differ a little bit here. She said we both walked in. I said I waited at the door, but that's the trick of memory. The thing is that we agree that I was on the couch in the room with her. We agree with that, and that he motioned me to sit down and close my eyes, which was a very normal occurrence. So when you're sitting in the current room, now just think about it from a spiritual standpoint, the belief was that the current, the good, the prayers and the good feeling was circulating around the room. And actually you could feel the energy moving, you know, it was very cool. And so sitting down and closing your eyes, if you opened your eyes, you could have negative energy come in. That's the belief system. So I sat down and closed my eyes, but then she called out for help. And she was mine, you know, I was in charge of taking care of her. I was the shepherd. So I opened my eyes. And there he was with a towel over his shoulder, with his pants undone, his penis out. She was kneeling on the floor in front of him, and he was pushing her head towards his crotch. The problem is when something like this happens, you don't actually process it right away because you think like, this cannot be happening. This is just impossible that this is happening. Oh my God. And because he saw me seeing, then he backed away, okay, from hurting her. She stood up, and then he tried again, actually. He tried a second time to have her.
While your eyes were open?
Well, my eyes were open, yeah. It's like I guess he decided he would, from my point of view, he was deciding whether or not he could test my loyalty. What he didn't know was I really didn't care. You know, I mean, I wasn't a Casa guide. I was a guide. There was two different things. So then he turned to her and he said, he calls in a translator actually, and he said, "You passed the test," because she had denied and not let him do it. And he goes and he opens up this cabinet and he gives her a crystal and says, "You passed the test. You need to learn Portuguese. You need to come back to Brazil. You're going to sit in the chair next to me. I'm going to teach you. It's going to be okay." So it gets very confusing. Was it a healing? Was it a molestation? What exactly happened? But rather quickly, I realized no matter what it was, he had abused one of mine. Does that make sense? It would be like if you saw your sister having something iffy happen. And that night, he came to the posada, which is like the bed and breakfast where you stay, which he never, ever did. And he brought his niece and he had a new wife at that time, and he brought everybody with him. And we were all in shock that he'd come, but he'd come to reiterate that he was just a man. That's what he said. "I am just a man." And now before, when I had heard him say that, I thought he meant, "I am just a man. I am not a special." But when I heard it this time, I heard, "I am a man with a man's needs." Rather than, you know, that I am just a man, I'm not holy or anything like that. And he looked right at me, and the poor girl, when she asked who was at the table, and I said, well, that's his new wife, and it brought out she went bananas, because I think in her mind she was justifying everything because he had chosen her. And I think he did that with a lot of victims. He made them feel chosen. So,
and then he gets married. He has this other wife, and everybody.
Yeah. So she was faced with reality, right?
Connection.
It was bad. So the big thing is that at that point I realized what had really happened, and that all the stories that I'd heard, and the disappearing women and the people fleeing and da 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 da, was all real, and that I had been a fool not to pay more attention. Okay. And I was, instead of being afraid, I was angry. I was so mad. It was as if he had accosted me. And in a lot of ways he did, because he took away my perception of how things were. And I began telling people everywhere, the posada owner. But just like at first I didn't pay attention, they didn't pay attention. Oh no, he's a good man. I know he's okay. Oh no, my wife is beautiful. If he was going to sexually molest anyone, he would have molested my wife. Turns out later, I get an email. His wife confessed that she had been sexually molested.
Wow.
But see, that's the illusion, right?
Mm-hmm.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
So then I began talking to the workers, because I was trying to work out what to do, because in my case, although he had made an attempt to sexually molest the woman, he had not actually done anything. He had thrown her down and raped her, I would have gone to the local authorities, although trying to find local authorities would have been really hard. But yeah, he had acted inappropriately. Now Brazil has a very aggressive law about that. They have a law that says that if you use undue influence on somebody for a sexual act, that person can go to prison for 8 years.
Wow.
But there's a 6-month window. You have to report it within 6 months, and many victims can't even get it together years later. Yeah. So they do have, they're not like, you're not in the jungle. They are trying, okay, very hard. But I decided, well, I work with the workers and say, look, he should never be alone with anybody. If he wants to go to Sao Paulo and have a hooker, yay, it's his business. But these people are vulnerable. These people, this is an abuse of power. This isn't good. So why don't we just make sure that if they're told to have a private, that you don't do privates anymore. You don't let them come in and do private things. And the people began agreeing with me, and then there were good people who were volunteering. I mean, honestly, nice, good people. And one of them started crying, and she said, oh my God. When she'd heard about the oral sex, because she had taken little girls out of his office and wiped the ejaculate off their mouths, but he had told her it was ectoplasm.
And what is ectoplasm actually?
Ectoplasm is a fluidic envelope that surrounds everybody, that allows in spiritist, sometimes the medium's in a box and the ectoplasm flows out of their mouth, right, and then makes a spirit. Ectoplasm is considered to be a fluidic envelope. Okay. Right. So when you're healing somebody, there can be ectoplasm, like on Ghostbusters when they left.
Right. I was going to say that's yeah. Ghostbusters. That's where I heard it.
She believed that was it. But when I told the story, then what happens is your conscious mind, not your subconscious, kicks in, and you go like, oh my God, these little girls had ejaculate all over their faces.
But then they were with him alone, obviously.
Oh yeah. Now again, why would that be?
Because of trust? Because thinking he didn't have it in him?
No, it's not that. It's the parents would bring them. It's mixed. I mean, sometimes they were there for healing. there's a father and his daughter who actually went to the authorities. The father was told, just like I was, to sit down and close my eyes, and then he abused the daughter. And then no one would believe that the father sat there and kept the eyes closed, so it was thrown out of court. And I can see why the father did that, because he was terrified to open his eyes, because he was.
Oh, right. No, I more meant like the trust in and going into the room, and having your child with him. But yeah, so they threw it out because
the father didn't open his eyes. What father wouldn't open their eyes when their daughter called for help? And that was the basis of throwing it out. Right. So he's gotten off several times. This isn't the first round of sexual abuse accusations.
Right. And I mean, what kind of pushed it over the edge to really realize that it was actually his sperm? Was there? It was just.
Well, it's like your reality switches. So I don't know if you or any of your listeners have ever been conned, but it's like when you realize you've signed for the gypsy's car and she's not going to pay for it. It's that kind of thing. Or you get involved, you spent thousands of dollars in some kind of multi-level scheme, and you realize you're not going to make any money.
Right. And if it was happening to the adults, it must have been happening to the kids, but he actually was able to complete it because you're dealing with an innocent child that doesn't even know.
Well, now a lot of the victims that have come forward were 7 or 8 when it happened, and now they're coming forward to tell their stories. So that was the way to explain it is he had a taste for white paper, so that anybody out there in the audience who was there and thinks, oh my God, I could have been abused, probably not, because it was a very specific type that he liked to abuse. It was that air of innocence, that beauty, that youth, the joy of being there. He loved to go after that kind of stuff. So that if you were old and arthritic, you probably weren't going to get abused. That was just the way it was. So he definitely was very prolific. I mean, if you think, even he's been at it for 30 years. If you abuse 2 women a week, you can do the math. I mean, it's staggering. And over 700 victims came forward, and we were very, very lucky. That 6 of them fit within the 6-month criteria. So even though he's 76, 77, something like that, he didn't seem to slow down at all. The big thing, I think, from a spiritual perspective for myself, because one of the things we've been looking at is a story about all of us who broke the story and the ramifications we suffered. So the questions that I'm sure are lurking in the back of your mind, well, how can great evil exist with great good? And I have done some research and found that some people are saying it's a conspiracy. Well, hurting victims to make a conspiracy is a lot like hurting ants. You can't do it. It is not a conspiracy against him. I mean, honestly. So the sheer preponderance of the victims was so embarrassing that they actually locked him up before he was officially indicted, because they said he was a public menace. In some countries, when you're very, very wealthy, including the US, you can get away with things and get out of jail. And he did he did try, but it wasn't effective, so they kept him. And then when they got enough victims, he's been bound over for trial, so the trial hasn't happened yet. What is true is that the reason he's in jail and the trial is about sexual abuse, not baby farms. The amount of exploitation out there is staggering, and the amount of rumors is staggering. I mean, I can't say whether or not he was holding teenage girls hostage and creating babies to sell, but that's couched in a Brazil that is somewhere in the 17th century instead of now. Brazil has some of the harshest adoption laws. I mean, you cannot adopt a Brazilian baby. It's a very, very difficult. And it would be very difficult to get with an undocumented baby out of the country, period. It's a regular country, you have to understand that. So I'm not so sure about that. It's an interesting story.
Right.
Could he have facilitated some adoptions for people in the village? He was very powerful.
Yeah, I think some thinking that there's a child trafficking thing connected to the fact that people are saying he was the healer of the Clintons or Bill Clinton, and then Oprah was there, and they're people are trying to connect dots with this much larger global human child trafficking thing, that he might be able to get away with it through a underground operation of those sorts. But right, you don't have that kind of information at this time. So
no, and again, I'm lucky because I was part of the breaking story, so I'm still in the loop as to what's happening with the prosecutor and what's going on. And there's a possibility I'll have to testify. We'll see what happens, one step at a time. But there's none of that I know of, and I'm pretty sure I would know. Now, he did own an illegal uranium mine that was poisoning the Amazon, up in Minister Ice. I know. So you don't even know about that, right? Because the child trafficking takes everybody's mind. He did have guns are very illegal in Brazil. Maybe it's going to be changing in the near future, but at present, they're very illegal. He did have a cache of automatic weapons that he would have even gotten arrested in the United States for having, okay? He did have millions of dollars of cash stashed. I know all these things. I do know that they're checking the Passiflora. I do know, although we were told that the Passiflora came from a pharmaceutical company, it did not. That it was not pure, and that we don't really know what's in it. So they've taken samples of the Passiflora, and it's going through the process. Passiflora, if it was Passiflora, it's a tranquilizer. So depending on there's 47 different kinds of Passiflora, right? Mm-hmm. And so we don't know what was exactly in these pills. And I do know that after having stood in line many times to get medicine, that there was medicine and then there was medicine. So the people who dispensed it would have little pre-packed bags, but sometimes they would read the note and they go someplace else and get other medicine. Was this for some of the victims? I don't know. We'll find out.
Right.
There's as far as the money making, as far as I know, much of the money that was coming in was unmonitored, so that the amount of money has led the government to be concerned about money laundering. So I do know that that's out there. I do know that a couple of days ago, his son was arrested for taking a gun and threatening a victim, one of the 6 who was going to testify, for threatening a victim with the guns. So that's a fact. He's in jail right now. Nice that they're together. For all of the believers and the entities and the angels and the things that came, I am not so sure, because I do believe in entities and I do believe in angels. I'm not so sure they came through Joelle like everybody believes. Do I believe that they were present because there's a couple hundred people meditating and lifting up their hearts and creating this wonderful healing energy? Yeah, I believe it. Do I believe that the entity came into him and told him what to do? I did at first, I have to admit, and I have to say, I think I was conned. That's the part that hurts so hard, like, oh my God, I was conned. Because looking now, in retrospect, I went back and checked all of his claims, and he was a street child, I don't know if you've experienced street people, but the street kids are dangerous. They'll pick your pocket, they'll steal your purse, they'll con you. They're good at it. So there's a story about Joao standing on the street in Uberaba, and suddenly he had a seizure or something happened to him. And people lined up for him to put his hands on them. Now, in Uberaba, that's very normal because Chico Xavier lived there. He was a big spiritist healer guy and wrote a lot of books. So apparently when he came to, or when his brothers and sisters, saw all the money, they went like, whoa, this is really cool. You know, we can make, and imagine that they're living hand to mouth on the street. So is it possible that a scheme was born? Look, you can do this. Look, this is really interesting. And then he went to do it. And does a healer sometimes believe in their own abilities? And then it gets ego. They say in Brazil that it's a donkey ride. So your ego is a donkey and it walks by and you go, hey, but sometimes you get on the donkey. So they say that Joao sold donkey ride tickets. So you would be round and round, right? So here's the thing. I think something that was a minor scheme got out of control. And then other people from other countries began shaping it according to their belief systems. And then the whole thing became a monster. I think probably Joao was always a sexual predator or a psychopath or whatever it takes to do this to so many people. But that whatever it was in him, just it became more than anybody ever believed. And then people began being in danger. And then when you have that kind of energy and really a lot of money, you attract people who are interested in monetary gain. And when that happens, then it starts getting really evil. I mean, so there was the pilgrims, the people who went were the good part. Right. Again, the camaraderie, the love, all that kind of stuff, that was pretty wonderful. But the actual operations and the sexual part is out of hand. Now, I know some stuff I can't share about other sexual activity in the village that was part of the plot. And that's where some of the rumors are coming out of. But again, one step at a time. We're going to go one step at a time, because it's really, I could come out and say, come see me and I'll spray you with demon spray and all the demons are going to go away and everything is going to be okay in your life, and I'm going to stop the global crisis that's happening because we're out of balance, blah, 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 blah. Well, it's not true. It's that each of us has within our hearts the ability to lift ourselves up and to move into integrity and to stop being victimized.
Right.
And that's what I want. That's
beautiful.
So, yay.
Oh, so I love it. Thank you so much for saying that. Can you speak to us a little bit about what you thought of the surgeries? I mean, what exactly is he doing with these tools?
The idea is that you cut the skin and then negative energy can come out. That's the idea behind it, but it's very common as a kind of a carnival trick.
Like a blood-letting thing, but what about this?
Yeah, maybe. But I think in this case, he was, I mean, you have to really move your brain into thinking he might have been a con artist.
But what about who would have the confidence to shove scissors up somebody's nose?
Well, actually, I've seen that in India with a 3-penny nail.
Uh-huh. Yeah, like
you actually have 5 inches between your sinus. And although many of the people said that it didn't hurt, or they were
they were sedated. They were sedated with that herb. So
maybe, but just think about think about the pickpocket. If you've never had your purse stolen or your pocket picked, when it happens, you're not aware because they do the bump and run. So when you're bumped, you move it's like your spirit goes outside of your body for a second and you're not aware because you're thinking of the bump. Meanwhile, they're picking your pocket.
Right. It's just amazing how so many people would have that done to them and almost the same reaction every time. But do you know much about the daughter's claims about maybe some of this stuff with? I mean, it wouldn't surprise me with his kind of record, so we don't have to focus on that too much. But yeah, just wondering.
No, she, because of the things she went through, she became a drug addict. So I think there's a lot of hushing up. I think when she came forward, she was sincere, and then she reversed her story. But she gave so many details when she came forward that even the authorities believe her story. So reversing it is the same like my husband beat me. Oh no, he didn't. I mean, it's so what happens to victims.
Yeah, I mean, when you're traumatized, and I mean, it's just very difficult territory to, express.
Yes.
Yeah. And so do you feel like people are walking away legitimately healed by this person? I've heard people have regained their eyesight, and just it seems like there's a lot of stories, but there's a lot of also people that don't feel like anything happened. But anything that you noticed about that, like, whoa, I mean, he really is, doesn't make it okay for, and that's the problem when people are like, oh, but he's a healer. Who cares about the rest of these stories? It's like, so what? Doesn't matter who he is. But yeah.
Actually, there was a woman who was getting her PhD that asked for prior medical records and then went to follow up with a bunch of people to see what had happened. And there's no verifiable healings that happened. Even my best friend, her name was Anna, and she lived on the island of Malta. She went with breast cancer, and he told her she was healed. And she wasn't. And her breast became necrotic. As a matter of fact, you could walk down the street in Abidjan with the tourists, and you could smell the people with breast cancer where the cancer was coming through the skin and rotting their skin. They stunk. And that's unconscionable in today's day and age. No one should have their breast rot off. But they believed so much in the healing that they refused the traditional treatment, and they all died. I mean, that's the way it was.
They all died, you said?
Yeah, they all died. I mean, that nobody says how many people went there and died. They're looking for the cure. So good science says you have to look at both sides of it. So did some people feel better? Say you have a chronic, say you have arthritis or something. Sure, you're in the mountains where the air is different, you're eating different food, you've taken a journey, you're away from your problems and the pressures of the world. Who knows what causes chronic disease? We don't know. Sitting in meditation for 8-10 hours a day, can that help? Sure. So did people walk away feeling better? Yes, they did. What part of blindness can be kind of psychosomatic, or what's the degree? See, nobody asked, like, if I were to go and say I was blind, I could mean that without my contacts I can hardly see, or I can mean I'm blind, like I don't see anything at all. Nobody asked. There was there was really no need, and nobody really cared because it was a personal experience. Even Oprah, my heart goes out to her because people don't realize that when she was there, she had just closed Harpo Studios, and she had to lay off her friends because the Harpo Studios no longer existed. She had a broken heart, and she was there when everybody was just like somebody come to your house, you'd clean your house, right? Oprah comes visit, would you dust? Yes. So everybody was in a very joyful mood that she was there, and she felt the love, and her heart began to heal. She had an experience, and you can't take that away from her. It's just that it's not duplicable. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean,
and I wish it was. I really, really wish it was. And I wish, and one of the things I'm working on now is how do you activate people's hearts so they create their own healing? how does that happen? What can we do? Because I think we can do that.
Oh yeah.
I think we've been leading towards that for a long time, but it's in them, not the outside person.
Yes.
We can be a trigger. And,
That's it.
and so, yeah. So did some people walk away feeling better? Yeah, they did.
Yeah.
But not even close to everybody. Although, did people have a good time? Was it life? Yeah, was it life changing? Did you ever go to a great party and come home feeling really great and go out and do something good? It's not like that. It was like a great, good time that can be very healing psychologically to a lot of people. And we can't take, the people who received healing, they were ready to receive healing. It didn't have to be from Joao, it was from the universe.
Right. And just the community and feeling you're in a space where you can be yourself, you can own the process you're in, where in our society it's very difficult. There's just that tendency to hide or kind of battle it on your own, and that kind of community.
Put our faith in the white coat. I had to laugh because Joao would often wear a white coat at first, just like a doctor. So it's the white coat syndrome. You go see your doctor, you feel better because he has a white coat on. But that again, different countries, different ways of doing things, different. Like I'm a big fan of herbal remedies, so they work for me, but I can't say that they'll work for you.
Right, exactly.
I can say, you know what, honey, you should try it. Laura, my God, you should try it. And then maybe you will, and maybe it'll work, and maybe it won't.
Right. I'm the same. We're in a very similar field, so it's so interesting that so there's a lot of people that, I mean, I know you mentioned that it's not a conspiracy, but they're saying that the 12 women that first came out are part of some organization, and it's very like lesbian and feminist, and there's a huge targeting on Brazil, and there's a huge targeting on spiritual people in Brazil. And can you speak to those people a little bit, because they're probably the ones that are in opposition to all this the most.
Okay. Everybody has their story. And can a lesbian be abused sexually by a man? Yes. I was part of the backstory, and I did not see that. I did not see that at all. I do know that a victim advocacy group was telling the women that if they showed their faces, they would be persecuted, that Joao would send demons after them, or worse yet, actual hitmen. And so there was a huge amount of fear. But as far as being organized enough to be a conspiracy, no way. No way. Not only that, but Pedro Bial is a very wonderful, integrous man. And what you don't know is the chairman of the board of Global, the TV show, authorized this. So there was enormous amounts of due diligence. There was nothing. I wouldn't have been part of something that was non-integrous. Yeah. Every single thing was integrous. Now, later, did some victims advocacy groups work to be, I don't know what the word is, get money in some ways? Yeah, it's happening now as we speak. People who are con artists are coming out of the woodwork. Stories are, it's a little bit different in Brazil because the press can be sensationalist, sort of like Weekly World News, remember that, or the Star? Yeah, that gets your attention, and it's much more prevalent than good journalism because it's what the people want. You give them what they want, right? But the people who actually broke the story it's an international TV, a company, Global, who's in Canada and down in Brazil. It's the biggest TV station. They would not have taken the risk if there was even a hint of stink from it.
Yeah. Well, somebody said it was the biggest like fake news show.
No,
news is
absolutely not.
Yeah.
Honestly, why would they do that? Pedro's a star on his own. He did it out of love. He did it because he felt that this was a story that had to come out, and that women were being victimized, and that it had to end. And it isn't, I will say that it isn't just Joelle victimizing people. It's waking women up not to be victimized by anybody, especially people who put themselves off to be spiritual.
That's the worst to me. There's no greater. I mean, I don't want to measure it because there's just no way to really measure it. But I mean, there's so many victims on such a multiple level. Anybody who even traveled that far to go see him and put their faith in him. Anybody who was in a private room, and I mean, it's just the amount of victims is probably larger than I can think of any.
Well, and you can think too about the men weren't exactly not victimized. I mean, they were economically.
I can, yeah. Well, they put their faith in it. I mean,
yeah.
It's all around every single person. It's not just the women. It's the men who brought their wives. It's the men who also had the surgery done and might not have had anything good come out of it, that might have, died too because they didn't get the medical treatment they needed. So,
like my friend. And then there's also think about the marriages that failed because of the secret of the abuse. Think about the women who couldn't be good mothers to their children. I mean, it's horrendous when you think about it.
What sort of numbers do you think? I mean, in his whole career, how many individuals do you think have been exposed to him and sought out his healing? Just a ballpark, maybe.
I'd say in the hundreds of thousands.
Yeah.
Easy.
Yeah.
There were maybe towards the end. See, I stopped going in 2008 after this happened. I just, like so many good, whenever there's great evil, many good people just pull away. You don't want any part of it anymore. You say, I don't go there anymore. And I was very outspoken. That's how they found me. I actually put up a blog, but it took 10 years for somebody to read the blog. And so that was the sad part. But then again, interestingly, the country wasn't ready yet. Now the country's ready. Now they didn't have Me Too. They had a different way of looking at things. So things happen. I think we have to realize, so long as we're in integrity, so long as we speak our truth, eventually someone's going to hear us. That's what I want to tell the victims. Be in integrity, speak your truth. If you don't feel that you're getting what you need, keep speaking the truth, and eventually somebody's going to listen to you, because our consciousness raises. And as our consciousness raises, then then great evil is abolished. We see it all around us all the time. We just don't actually see it. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So tell me about just kind of how you all women sort of found each other and
there was a writer on Pedro Bial's show who's actually her very good friend was victimized and shared, and she got her heart went out to her friend, so she was able to start doing research, seeing if she could find people who could testify to this. And she convinced the people there on the TV network that this was worth talking about. They did a lot of research. They found a post that I had put where I had said, look, if you're going to go, but just don't ever be alone, and don't let anybody do anything to you that you wouldn't let them do to you at home. Mm-hmm. So if somebody grabbed your breast at home, would you punch them in the nose? Yes. So when you travel, you have to keep your integrity with you. Don't lose your mind here. And please don't be alone with Joelle, because yes, he is a sexual abuser. And no, I don't understand how healing happens. At the time I wrote the blog, I was dumbfounded by what was happening and very hurt. But they found the blog and they were interested in me because I had witnessed. Witness is different than a victim.
And do you think, besides oral sex, it went all the way to rape?
Yes, I believe that. It would, it would depend on, isn't it like, you mentioned the Clintons, isn't like, well, what's sex? I mean, I don't know, but I do think he did do penetration. I mean, I do think that happened to some people. I think he it wasn't like he threw people down on the floor and knocked them in the head. He would turn them around. See, the thing that was astounding to me is the victims didn't even know each other. And as they started coming out, their stories were so eerily the same. So he would bring them in, he would tell them he was balancing their chakras, he would turn them around, he would rub on them, he would put their hand in back and then put it on his penis. I mean, one story after another was exactly the same. After a while, and they were from 17 different countries. And, I mean, it wasn't like they got together and had tea or anything and made up this story. So that was the interesting thing about the stories from everybody. And the interesting thing, I think, that got the prosecutor's attention was it didn't really vary all that much. He had a technique, and the technique worked. Every once in a while, besides just getting him hard, he would also penetrate them from behind and ejaculate. So the victim would be so stunned that they didn't know what to do. I mean, what do you do? Right. And here's this person who's the big healer. Was it a spiritual healing? Your conscious mind has to kick in and say, wait a minute, I was sexually abused. But you don't do that right away.
Yeah. Actually, I think the show that you were on, there was a quote from a woman that said she had gotten pregnant and he gave her a pill to abolish the pregnancy.
I have heard that.
I think that was not maybe a different.
That's very, I don't know that firsthand, but it's likely.
Right. So I know one of the big stories, and however much you want to share, of course, in regards to it about Sabrina, everybody considered her to be the main whistleblower, and that she, commit suicide and had kind of announced all these things that haven't been, proven yet. What can you share with us about Sabrina?
I wasn't part of the sourcing of some of the victims, and Sabrina had something to do with a victim advocacy group. So I think what might have happened is that when they were looking for victims, they had sought her out because she had an attachment to this victim group. I do know that she was the source of telling them not to show their faces. I do know there was a problem because most of them actually wanted to be live on TV or be live on, just like
real.
Yeah, they didn't want to hide, but she was the one telling them that they had to hide. So right from the start, there was some issues with Sabrina. And I would say for me, from the United States, being on international TV in Brazil, it was interesting, but it really didn't impact my life as much as the Brazilians. Okay, because the people here in the United States, they still think I'm like, I went to the jungle to be on TV. So, but with Sabrina, it was a big deal because she got this press. So I'm not sure. I saw the Oprah piece where she was saying, Oprah, we need you, come out. It was very performance artist-like. And that's how before that, I hadn't met her. I didn't know her until I saw this piece. And then I was like, oh my God, it's bad enough that all these women are going through all this again. This is just raising the temperature or making it crazier. What her motivation is, I don't know. Like, I don't know. I didn't know her. And I'm still not sure. The jury is out as far as I'm concerned, but the thing that's not happening is there's some negative things you'll hear in the future that haven't come out yet. Because in this world, with some of the organizations that are hooking onto this story, let me see if I can make myself clear. Oh, here in the United States, Bezos just came out against the newspaper, right? That said that they were extorting him because they said they had pictures. That's exactly what happens in Brazil. So there's extortion. I'll expose you, or maybe you're a priest or a minister or something, and then the Joao thing hits, and then there's all kinds of extortion. We won't put your story forward. It's a creepy world out there. I don't know if Sabrina had anything to do with it, but what you have to do is when you read any story, you have to read between the lines and see what's happening. Here it's a little bit easier because we get to see journalism, real journalism, more or less. There it's much harder. So it's easier to extort people. So I don't know. Time will tell. We'll find out.
And what do you think, just based on all the different accusations, based on what the court documents have? Well, let me first ask, do you know much about the women in Sedona, the 7 women? I heard something about that. So it's not just in Brazil. There must be victims of anybody that was kind of his type.
I don't think just because he traveled, he didn't stop abusing people.
Yeah. So yeah, because there was some people in Sedona, there's court documentation. Some people keep thinking
I've heard of that, yeah.
fake news and stuff.
No,
it's an element of fake
Sedona
news.
thing was real because for a while there, he got his visa pulled. So the United States was paying attention to it. And actually, because of all this, as a tour guide, there's travel advisories. So it says, don't go there. Like, don't go to Libya right now. Okay. So one of the things is don't go to Abidjan right now. There's a travel advisory. It's a dangerous place. And we have to suss it out a little bit more. So there was, they pulled some of his documents because of the Sedona thing. Although that's as far as I haven't seen the paperwork or anything, but I do know that was happening. And I do know there was actually investigation and that the woman sued. I know that particular Casa closed because she was the lady who was running it, who I don't even know her name, but she wanted to be Casa North America, and then he would come and visit there, and then the pilgrims would come. She had an idea. I do believe she was a good person. Okay. And so she just wanted to make it so you wouldn't have to travel so far.
Right.
The same thing with Omega. Omega had him come so people could come from Canada and other places and not travel so far. Was there an outrageous fee to pay? Sure, there's an outrageous fee to pay for most workshops at Omega. I don't think it was a John of God conspiracy. I just think they need to pay for their facilities and have money, So but the press, when he traveled, started getting more and more negative. So I am not sure how many foreign victims he victimized on foreign soil. Mm-hmm. So like when he went to Australia, there's some stories about some Australian victims. There's New Zealand, some stories about that. I mean, there's just almost anywhere he went, he left this trail. And that would make sense if indeed he was a psychopath and if indeed he did.
Oh yeah, you just don't stop.
You don't take a vacation.
I read somewhere, oh yeah, maybe he's looking at 2 to 6 years. And I'm not into the jail system. So when I talk about that, it's not like, lock him up. I mean, in general, with anybody, that's just my viewpoint, that there's ways to rehabilitate somebody, but then there's people that just can't be healed and they need to be put away. So regardless of my opinion about jail, because I know there's a lot of people out there that think I should have more compassion and not want him locked up for this. All that aside, how much time do you think he's looking at?
Well, there's 2 different counts. There's actual rape, and then there's spiritual exploitation. Okay, so the spiritual exploitation is 2 years, and the actual rape is 4 years. So it's like a system like ours, right? Now, that said, I think he'll be convicted. I have no doubt. The court has the ability to have compassion if they wish, and they can put him under house arrest. So that's what some people are concerned about, because the monster won't really be beheaded. He'll just be on house arrest. And will people still wend their way to his door? Yes.
Right.
Don't think
lawyers there that'll.
That you have to imagine, if you were a Brazilian judge or magistrate or however the system is, would you really want that on your head? After all, judgeships and prosecutorial things are political. he's a political hot potato. I doubt that he'll get house arrest right away. I do know he'll be convicted because they have really strong evidence.
Did you ever hear the stories about how he was being interrogated and the keyboard froze, and then all of a sudden a bunch of O's went across the screen, and a cop supposedly broke his arm, and all sort of supernatural sort of things were going on that they felt was coming from his energy?
Yeah, I've heard that. Again, you have to understand the quality of the place where they were doing the interviews, and the people who were doing them were using systems that were very, very old. the tiredness involved with taking depositions from 700 and some women would lead to accidents. You know,
so they did depositions with the 700 women. So, because a lot of people are like, oh, there can't be that number, and how did the number go from this to this and then back down to this? So people probably retracted, and of course, if somebody's going to break a story, you're going to get a flood of emails because everybody's feeling like, now I can speak. So there was
yes.
700.
Well, they actually, I believe it's somewhere around 700 that they actually took depositions from. You have to understand that has a ring to it, because otherwise they wouldn't have held him. Just like in the United States, where you actually have to be charged. You know, you watch Law and Order and they say, charge me. He was held as a public menace and not charged until after Christmas, when he could be charged. So I believe that they did take depositions from that many people. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been held for so long.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm again, I mean, I'm not sitting next to the prosecutor or anything, but I do. The prosecutor was on the show with me. I do know some of the things that are going on, and I think it's being handled in a very scientific, law and order type way that is much more rigorous than you're giving the Brazilians credit for. The prosecutor did not want something like this happening in her country. She was appalled by what was going on. She was very, very diligent. Like, none of us met each other before the show. We did not know each other. That's why the conspiracy thing is so funny, because we were not allowed. We were in separate rooms.
You mean all the other women you were with?
The woman I was on stage with, we did not meet each other first. We did not know each other. We did not talk.
I got you.
Yeah. And that was because of the prosecutor, because she didn't want to taint any evidence. So I'm 100% sure that she's handling it with the utmost integrity, and that the rumors are just that. They're rumors.
But if it's multiple rapes, I guess that would double the amount of time, maybe. If all that.
Of course. And you know, and hearing all the stories, and just imagine, I wouldn't want to sit and listen to 700 stories. It was bad enough I heard 7. You know, it was. It shook me to the core. 700. Of course, there were things happening in the office, because it would have been so devastating. And not only that, the worries of the people involved, because it had the town itself had become an industry. Okay, it was the Joao industry, the Casa industry. So there's this little town in the mountains, and you know, like a good third of the people worked in the village, had little shops, had things, and people had restaurants, and their economy was a lot based on the foreign dollars coming into the Casa. So as they're listening to these testimonies, they're realizing that their sisters and brothers and aunts and uncles are going to be unemployed. Do you know how hard that must have been? It must have just shaken them to the core. And yet at the same time, there's also that guilt, because if I have anything to feel bad about, it's because I didn't do more when I found out. I wish I had thought how to. I did the best I could. And I think some of the townspeople felt guilty that they didn't do more.
But look at you here now. I mean, it's
I know, yay.
I'm just so blown away. It is so huge. Whatever it took, I mean, you did do the best you could, and you're doing better than, I mean, you're the one that set this all in motion, and it's life altering for the whole planet. And there's
I feel it. Did you just get the tingles? I feel the
oh,
tingles.
I'm tingled.
Yes.
I'm totally.
It's good.
Hmm. Yeah, I was sort of doubling up on that question about just meeting the other women in terms of yeah, just some of you know, the likenesses in the stories and just kind of like how it all threaded together. So I assume you guys are all kind of still in touch and or how
I do believe there's an idea to do a story about the journey that led to this, that our own personal lives and much like what you're doing actually, but looking into our lives and what happened and what's the backstory about how it all happened. And I think sometimes people need to see that. I mean, I'm okay. I might be a psychic, which is a little bit different, but other than that, I'm a nana. I have a dog. I have a cat. I'm a normal person. Okay. And I'm a normal person who was asked to do, step outside of my comfort zone and reach out to my sisters and brothers and hold out a hand to say you don't have to endure this anymore. And I started out in Brazil, they say chiga, which is enough. Okay, I started out doing that, and then I realized that I'm going to be 72, and I didn't have a lot of warrior left in me. So now what I say is, be the light. That's all you have to do. Let others do the work, and that's what you're doing, Laura. You're being the light, and that's what happens when you shine the light. The rumors and the weird things go away, and you just have to be the light, and that's beautiful. Thank you for that.
oh, thank you so much.
You're
Well, I
welcome.
just feel like the truth has emerged from, you know, this time with you. It feels just it's gonna be so clarifying for so many people that are just shuffling through all these different stories out there. Is there anything about, you know, what you're seeing or what's going on that you've been noticing currently that you want to point out, or any final thoughts, anything that we weren't able to share that you'd like to put some attention on?
I would just say, don't give away your personal power.
Oh yeah.
Your salvation is in your heart. That the triangle at the Casa that they show all the time is really a symbol of the soul that goes back thousands of years. So long as you find out what you love to do, like what you're doing, have the courage to speak out, and then God is with you, and reality shifts and gives you all the abundance you need.
Absolutely. And just, yeah, what could we or what would you like to share with just everybody that made their way to John of God, or who is listening to this and really feeling that their inner world is shattering, you know, besides you know, really connecting in with spirit, and knowing that about themselves, just really wanting to kind of just touch their hearts, which you have this whole way through, but just as we close, just kind of just really connecting in with them. I'm really feeling from your last statement, and just wanted to share just a little bit more on that, because I know how hard it is. I've gone over to the like page. I've had a lot of people come onto my wall every time I post something, and it's just so unbelievably traumatic. And I mean, the message that you share is so incredibly important about, you know, connecting with just what's within us, and that we have it within ourselves, and we don't have to give our power away. But just specifically for all those that have experienced John of God, you know, any thoughts of what we could say to them?
It's never traveling or going outside your comfort zone is never bad, ever. We live in a very multidimensional world, and it's even more multidimensional than most people realize. And exposing yourself to that is always good. Okay, the healing comes from within you and your ability to take a risk. And I always I tease my students because I do a little game, and it's what's the four-letter word in the English language that most predicts happiness? And they always go, oh, love. And I go, no, it's risk.
Mm.
Yeah, so you don't ever feel bad about taking a risk. It's going to work out or not, but risk opens up your heart and changes your life. So don't be afraid to take a risk.
Right. Yeah. I mean, taking risks is just going to take you closer to the truth, and we wouldn't even know what the truth was or is
I
if
know.
didn't step outside
If
that
you didn't
zone
do
and
it.
experience what it's like. Because when we see all these things collapsing in our world and all these things that are absolutely crushing, we remember, what do we have to fall back on is ourselves, and building integrity in the community and looking after each other, protecting one another. And that's why it's so important to give this a voice. And I'm, just so thrilled that you got to spend this time with me. And
I am too, and I look forward to talking to you more in the future.
oh yeah, there's more to share on this story.
Yeah, there is.
There's a whole nother component and a whole nother dimension of it, but we definitely wanted to just stay focused on this particular aspect of it. And yeah, just, you want to share your info again, just where to find you, your healing information?
I'm in outside of Chicago, and you can go. I have a Facebook Live show every Wednesday at 7 p.m. Central Standard, and that's called the Intuitive Angel Radio Show because it used to be a radio show. And then I have the Intuitive Angel page, and I do personal readings and consulting and sharing, just like you do, spiritual counseling. And you can reach me at 630-554-5040, text or call.
Well, thank you so much. Your presence is incredible, your words, your wisdom, and your courage to just really say it like it is. And I mean, this is the most unbelievable thing. I'm in awe. So thank you so much. And thank you everybody for tuning in and sending lots of love.
Okay, bye everybody.
Bye.